Good morning, conservatively speaking, in the Assemblies of God Facebook page. This is Evangelist Jason Stidham, and we are so privileged to have as our special guest with us for the next 30 minutes approximately, the General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God, Dr. George Wood. I want to begin this interview by saying that I am very appreciative personally of him taking the time out of his very busy schedule to be with us and to answer some of the questions that you, the constituency of this Facebook page, have put forward for him to address. So Dr. Wood, on behalf of the Conservatively Speaking Facebook group and on behalf of myself, thank you, sir, for joining us today. And would you just take a few moments to speak to this Facebook page?
Well, Jason, greetings to you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to have this time of dialogue with those who are tuned in today. Appreciate you and all who are listening in. We're grateful for you and for all the ministers of our fellowship and churches. We're enjoying a tremendous year. We just had our statistics from 2016 that were given this week, and you may have seen it on our website. Incredible record of growth in 2016, and we're grateful for that. We're looking forward to a great General Council in 2017 coming up, and actually 2 months from now we will be in Anaheim. So appreciate all of you and hope that every one of you is able to come. We'll come to General Council. We try to use places where there's a range of prices for hotel rooms, and certainly within walking distance of the Anaheim Convention Center, there are lots of opportunities for varied price ranges, and we're just looking forward to a great council, both in terms of spiritual impact and the business that will be done. So I don't want to monologue this, so I'd rather just respond to questions.
Amen. Well, I told the chief just prior to coming on that he's the guest here, and he has the freedom to say whatever he wants to say whenever he wants to say it. Again, Dr. Wood, we're so appreciative of you taking your time to be with us. For all of you that are watching, this is live, and you will be able to also watch this video in hindsight for those of you that missed it here at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're viewing now and have a question for Dr. Wood, an appropriate question for the General Superintendent, feel free to send it in via the text here on the program. I can't promise, due to the time constraints, that we'll get to your question or to all the questions, but we will try. Dr. Wood, I want to begin with some general questions that were submitted. Basically, I'm just serving as a moderator here today, but there was a question that came in asking if you could give us an update on the process of the consolidation and particularly the auction of CBC. Can you bring us up to date as to where that process is, please?
It's gone very well. In fact, we just had a meeting of the Evangelist University Board of Trustees yesterday. Approximately 1/3 of all of the students at Evangelist University, including the seminary, approximately 1/3 are ministry majors. That is around between 550 and 600 on both the undergraduate and the graduate level. Ministry major at Evangelist University on the undergraduate level is the 4th largest major. I believe there are as many majors in ministry at Evangel as and more than when the last year CBC existed. So we're seeing the fruit of the consolidation in terms of the expenses by consolidating the faculty, the administration, and the like. We're seeing significant cost savings realized, and we're also, I believe, seeing an increased focus on vocational ministry and the strengthening of what we were doing. As probably many did not know, at the time the enrollment at Central Bible College had been on a steady trajectory of decline, and a pretty substantial impaired financial position operationally, as well as years of deferred maintenance, which had made it really impractical to continue to maintain the campus. So we're glad that essentially the goals of the consolidation are being achieved, and we're more effectively using Kingdom resources.
Just to follow up on that, so that we understand correctly, the number of ministers has increased since the schools have consolidated. Is that correct? The number of credentialed ministers coming out of these particular areas?
That's my understanding. That again, 1/3 with Evangel having about 2,400 or so students, somewhere between 22 and 2,400. Approximately 1/3 of those on the graduate and the undergraduate level are ministry majors.
Excellent, excellent. Can you give us as well, someone wanted to know, what has been the fiscal cost to date concerning the campus there at Central, since the auction still kind of in transition? Do you have a dollar amount?
We've essentially had, at this point, no bids come in that we wanted to accept. We have delayed the date for the final bids to come in due to some zoning issues that we're trying to work out with the city, and when those zoning issues get worked out, we'll go forward. We have sought diligently to see if there is another ministry, either inside or outside our fellowship, that would want the campus, but so far we really haven't had any takers that would want the entirety of the campus. We've had some interest in dividing up the campus into various uses, so that we're looking at that possibility at this point.
Excellent, thank you. I've got a second question here concerning another one of our educational institutions. Someone submitted a question and said, recently several districts have transferred their endorsement from Southeastern University to other educational institutions of the Assemblies of God, and they are requesting, is there an official reason why these districts chose to do so?
I don't have information on that. I'm not a member of the Southeastern University Board or the Southwestern University Board. I had heard that some superintendents who had been on the Southeastern Board have gone on the Southwestern Board, but I don't recall any official communications to me on that, other than the wonderful Assemblies of God Grapevine, which works extraordinarily well.
Which we have all heard from repeatedly.
I understand.
Okay, thank you. Got another question here concerning the future of our educational institutions. How can we ensure our academic institutions will adhere in the future to the 16 fundamental truths of the Assemblies of God and stay strong on the moral standards? I know that we have we've had some isolated incidents in our educational institutions where we've had some questionable behavior. So how are you and the national office ensuring the future concerning the 16 fundamental truths and the moral standards of our academic institutions?
Currently, we have 16 endorsed post-secondary schools. I believe we may have just added a 17th one, an ethnic one. But each of these institutions have a board of trustees or board of directors. It really is the responsibility of those boards to ensure that the schools maintain both their mission and their doctrine. To the best of my knowledge, all of the schools have on their boards of trustees sitting superintendents and pastors of Assemblies of God churches. So it is really vital that the boards stay alert to their mission. In the Alliance for AG Higher Education, we do have criteria which each school must meet in order to be endorsed by the Assemblies of God as an endorsed institution of higher education. So it really belongs, the fundamental responsibility belongs to the Board of Trustees as they keep watch over the mission and doctrine of the institution and ensure that the president, the administration, and the faculties of those schools adhere to both mission and doctrine.
Thank you for that clarity, and I think that's an important point. We oftentimes look to the national office or to district offices not recognizing that there is a broad spectrum of responsibility across the fellowship for these various entities. Let's move on from education. Is there something you wanted to follow up with?
I think it's important that we recognize that there are in any church or institution sometimes going to be aberrant things that happen.
Sure.
Really important that we don't judge the whole by some aberrant act or some personality that gets out of line, that
absolutely,
we have processes in place to try to address that. But in an academic context, especially with accreditation issues and the like, there are processes within our institutions to take care of those anomalies that do occur. But it's really, I try to encourage our fellowship. Our schools are doing a great job, and we don't want some particular, like if a staff member or a faculty member or even an administration member steps out of line, that just because they've stepped out of the line on an issue doesn't mean the whole institution has gone over the cliff.
Absolutely agreed, and thank you for bringing that point to the forefront. Let me follow that up before we move on and ask you, what is the outlook, what is the forecast concerning our academic institutions turning out credentialed ministers? We know there's a transition taking place. We know that there is a generation that's transitioning out, a generation that will be transitioning in. We know that a number of church plants are taking place around the nation. How are we going to make sure that all of these senior pastor positions and worship pastor positions and youth pastor and children's pastor, the list goes on and on, are we confident that we are producing enough ministers to fill these positions over the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Our current statistics show that we have, as you know, various streams for getting credentials. Berean is the Berean correspondence courses through Global University continue to be a strong feeder for persons who cannot do a residential program. They would be one of the largest segments for persons getting the entry level, the certified level. District schools of ministry are also really having an impact on the credentialing process because they are catering to persons. I think the average age in schools of ministries is around 45. So we're having a lot of career people that are transitioning, that feel the call of God in midlife to be ministers. Our schools also continue to be a strong source of credentialing, especially in the upper levels of license and ordination. In addition to that, we have various schools outside the Assemblies of God, which we will recognize providing criteria is met in terms of AG polity and doctrine and those kinds of things. So we are at our highest level of ministers we've ever had in the Assemblies of God, with over 37,000 credentialed ministers at the present moment. So the supply of ministers continues to be strong, although the average age has crept up somewhat over the last 10 years. It's around 54, 55 now, I think, the mean. So we're concerned about that, but we continue to see a strong surge of persons seeking credentials in our fellowship. And I've talked to those who serve with me on the executive leadership team. In the last several years, as we've gone to district councils, I've preached in 9 district councils this year. There's just record numbers of people being credentialed and record numbers of people being ordained. And so I'm very encouraged by seeing that trend. It is opposite to what many other fellowships or denominations are experiencing.
Excellent. I'm getting a few messages here. Got one that asked me to turn down my volume, said we're getting some feedback, so I've turned that down, and I hope that helps. You guys keep me up to date. The Chief and I were joking with one another just prior to this broadcast beginning. He doesn't know anything about the tech side, and I certainly don't know anything about the tech side, so we're doing the best we can, and we do appreciate the feedback of all of our viewers today. Dr. Wood, let's move on and address social media. I've had some questions come in. We do realize, I think everyone realizes, that there has been some tension inside the fellowship, and there have been some that have believed the cause of that tension to be social media becoming such a monster, if you will, that is so available to each and every one of us. Is social media responsible for the tension in the fellowship, or, as others believe, is social media a reflection of a current tension that exists within the fellowship?
I think social media gives people an opportunity to say things they wouldn't say to people face to face.
That's very true. Very true. Would you say that social media has it revealed has it revealed some of the internal conflict in the fellowship?
You know, given
conflict that may have always been there, maybe it even existed prior to social media launching, but has social media given a voice to it?
The answer probably on that, I think, would be yes. But again, I've been credentialed with the Assemblies of God since I was 16 years of age.
Right.
So Assemblies of God has always had a very active grapevine, even before social media. And there have always been various strands of perspective in the Assemblies of God on a wide number of issues. So that's part and parcel of a ministry that is based upon a lot of different people coming in from a lot of different streams. We have a lot of different educational backgrounds. A lot of our ministers didn't grow up in the Assemblies of God, and so we get a lot of different viewpoints. But I think on the main things, we're really united. And I would much rather have any tensions in our fellowship, which I think are relatively minimal, but I would rather have any tensions in our fellowship than the tensions in other denominations where they're arguing about ordaining homosexuals and all that kind of stuff. We don't have that. So grateful for that.
Totally agree. Let's follow up with that, and let's talk about unity and uniformity. And your viewpoint, what do we need to be? What are the main things that we need to have unity on, and what are the things that we need to have uniformity on, and what things can we allow some to differ in uniformity on?
Mission and doctrine and values really call for an agreement. Two cannot walk together unless they're agreed. So our mission is very clear. We have a fourfold statement of being that involves evangelism, discipleship, worship, and compassion. We have our 16 fundamental truths. I've tried to articulate as General Superintendent some core values that I believe are the DNA of our fellowship: passionately proclaim Christ, strategically invest in the next generation, vigorously plant new churches and revitalize existing ones, skillfully resource the fellowship, and fervently pray. So those things, there's, I believe, across the fellowship common agreement. Style is an issue on which people will disagree, and that's always been part of our fellowship as well, because we treasure local sovereignty and the ability of people to flex with what they see the needs of their community might be in terms of ministry approaches. I just give an example. A few years ago at a general council, it was the night I was to speak. I'm on the front row. My then 15-year-old grandson is standing next to me during the worship, and the worship band breaks out a song that I'm mumbling to myself. How did this get on the program? I don't like this song. It's vacuous. It doesn't have good theological content. I don't like the beat. I'm just saying all these things to myself. And I look next to me, and my 15-year-old grandson has both hands up in the air, praising the Lord. And I thought, well, I can lay aside my preference here if my grandson's getting blessed. So I think, probably how we do things, we've tried to allow a lot of, not allow, but our whole structure permits a lot of liberty of approaches. And even in preaching style, there's tremendous variety all across the fellowship. So we unity in the midst of diversity, I guess, is kind of what really describes us.
Let's do a follow-up on that question with you mentioning autonomy and sovereignty, which I personally believe are maybe the greatest strengths outside the doctrine of the Assemblies of God. But where does that autonomy, where do we draw a line on that? For example, what we're discussing right now, there have been some recent discussions among AG ministers, and I don't know if this is in practice. I do know that it's been a philosophical discussion about allowing same-sex couples to serve in the church. Now, not to serve in positions of leadership. I want to be very clear in that. Not to be a deacon or to serve in a spiritual position of leadership, but allow them to serve as greeters or ushers, other things for that example. I know that that's a heated philosophical debate. So as far as the autonomy and sovereignty of the Assemblies of God applied to a specific instance like that, where is the line in autonomy?
You know, on that particular issue, we don't have any official position. So when we don't have an official position, tends to work itself, that issue tends to work itself out on the grassroots.
Right.
I would, my personal counsel would be that we need to welcome sinners of all kinds into our church, but that does not mean putting them up front in a modeling role. If I were a pastor, I would not be using persons who had a known sinful behavior to be in a representational role at the church. There may be a few pastors, and I don't know who they are, but there may be a few pastors who have the philosophy of belong and then and give them a chance to come to believe.
Right.
So how far they want to stretch that, we have the executive presbytery, the general presbytery has not taken a stand on that. If they do choose to take a stand on that, then that would be a policy the districts would be charged with enforcing. But I suspect that it would only represent a very handful of our churches that would have an approach that would put a person in known sinful behavior in any kind of representational role in the church.
Thank you for that answer. And just an aside, we've got a number of ministers watching from Oklahoma, Texas, Illinois, Alabama, Arizona, and a number of them are expressing their personal appreciation to you today for taking time to be with us.
Oh, it's a joy. Thank you.
Let's move on, Dr. Wood. There's an alarming trend taking place in the nation where we have a redefining of our Constitution by those who believe the Constitution of the United States should be defined by the current culture that we find ourselves living in, rather than the original intent of the authors. Let's transpose that over into our fellowship, and there are some that seem to believe that our 16 fundamental truths, our doctrinal statements, that they are to be defined by the current culture that we live in, versus those that believe they should be defined by the author's original intent. How do we clearly define our 16 fundamental truths so that those definitions carry over from generation to generation, no matter what the current culture is?
A great question. Let me kind of do an overlay first, because I want to pick up on the U.S. Constitution issue. I've been deeply involved in religious liberty issues. In fact, just yesterday again was dealing with the situation where in a particular state our Chi Alpha chapter was kicked off campus because of the fact that the dean of students realized that they were part of the Assemblies of God and went to our position paper on human sexuality and kicked the Chi Alpha group off the campus. So we're working with various legal Christian entities that are helping us in cases. It's why when I was asked last May to be part of the Trump Faith Advisory Board, I agreed to serve. I would have agreed to serve if Hillary had asked me, because she needed some faith advisory. But, and I just recently, a month ago, was with a group of 40 other evangelical leaders and spent a couple of hours with the president in the White House and the vice president and the like. And I've been hard at work advancing the concern that we all have for religious liberty issues in our country. There is, in the culture, an attempt to redefine the First Amendment as freedom of worship, not freedom of free exercise of religion. So that is an ongoing battle. We need a lot of prayer and support on that. We've got a possible shot with this administration, if we can get one more Supreme Court justice, of giving us some safeguards on the religious liberty issues. In regard to Assemblies of God statement of fundamental truths, I don't personally know of anyone who is proposing that we change our statement of fundamental truths. There have been amendments to our statement over the years in terms of better defining the nature of the Trinity, defining the fourfold mission of the church was probably the last major amendment that was done. But the only way to guarantee that we will continue to be true to what our statement of fundamental truths is and what our mission is that we have in place the leaders who believe this at the district level, at the local church level, at the national level, and who will make sure, as in the role of overseer or bishop, that we are guarding the flock and guarding the doctrine, and the real cure is the people have a vital experience with Jesus. If people have a vital experience with Jesus and a vital experience with the Holy Spirit, they will not be working on trying to change a statement. I've often said that I believe if you had the apostles from the day of Pentecost today, they would look at our doctrinal statement and say that's exactly what we believe. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to get the 21st century church has to be as close to the first century church in doctrine as we possibly can be.
Very good. Very good. Let's follow up on that with a question about postmodernism. Basically, dovetails with the previous question. Postmodernism is definitely redefining our culture and threatening to further redefine our culture. How do you rate the threat of postmodernism inside the confines of the United States, and is there anything that national and district leadership can do to prevent postmodernism from attempting to redefine the values, the core values, as you mentioned a moment ago, of the Assemblies of God?
I don't see a great influence of postmodernism internally on our fellowship. And I think the fact that the church bodies in America that are growing are church bodies like ours, which hold to the centrality of central doctrines of the Christian faith, and groups that are compromising with postmodernism on issues of human sexuality, and on issues of the authority of Scripture, and on issues of the exclusiveness of Jesus Christ as the only way to salvation. Those groups are steadily in decline all across the board. So the greatest antidote to postmodernism is for us to believe and behave in accordance with what the Scripture teaches and in accordance with what the Holy Spirit blesses and honors. And when we do that, we will be salt and light in the culture. The culture will not impact us. We will be an impact upon the culture.
Do you consider, Dr. Wood, I know you're a student in all manners of subjects, and you're a student of church history. We look back at all the denominations, if you will, fellowships that have gone before us, and we see how many, if not almost all, have gone astray at approximately the 100-year mark. I would say the threat is even greater now because of this postmodern age. I'm supposing that the ELT converses about these things, and I'm probably being a little bit repetitive here, but just one more time, how do we make sure that history does not repeat itself and that the Assemblies of God does not go by the way of so many of those that have gone before us?
Well, I think that what we're seeing is that we're now a 103-year-old revival that is still going on across our fellowship. And I did, with the General Council coming to Anaheim, and also the fact that this year marks my 50th year as a credentialed ordained minister of the Assemblies of God. A couple weeks ago, and I shared this with a couple district councils in the spring, I went back. Where was the Assemblies of God in the year when I was ordained, 1967, to the gospel ministry? I was astounded. I was not prepared for the growth of the Assemblies of God is so incremental that I was not cognizant of the fact in 1967, worldwide, we had a little over 26,000 churches. Today we have over 368,000 churches. And in 1967, worldwide, we had 3.1 million believers. And today, worldwide, we have 68 million believers. And Not only that, in the United States, we have had in the last 50 years a net growth of 4,500 churches plus, and a net growth of we've more than doubled in size in the U.S. in the last 50 years. So that suggests to me that there is still a remarkable vitality of this spirit-led movement that's going on, and the statistics for 2016 again show the tremendous surge forward. So I think that we just need to keep on mission. We just need to keep our focus that we were called upon to do the greatest work of evangelism the world has ever seen. And we are seeing that take place. And I'm encouraged by that. Are there always potential threats? Absolutely. There will always be threats. You look at the New Testament church, look at the New Testament. You had tremendous, I wouldn't want to deal with some of the issues the Apostle Paul was dealing with. You know, people getting drunk at communion and the Lord's Supper, the Judaizers insisting you be circumcised in order to be saved. I mean, thank God, you know, they had to deal with those issues and we're not. But there will, in a vital, growing fellowship, there will always be stuff going on at the fringes, but those fringe things don't reflect the core vitality of the church.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Chief, I want to be respectful of your time. I've got maybe 4.
I'm good. I have an appointment at 11, so I'm good to go.
Okay, great. We'll try to finish this out here. I do not want to abuse your time.
Oh, you're not.
They're coming in. We've got a number of missionaries watching us.
Fantastic.
From other countries of the
shout
world.
out to all the missionaries. We have a fabulous missionary force around the world, and God is doing some great things.
This is a fantastic program that allows us to go live right into the office there at headquarters with the General Superintendent, Dr. George Wood. And again, we're so appreciative of his time, and he's doing a wonderful job taking your questions that have come in over the past few days. Dr. Wood, here's a question that was sent to us asking, what can we do to ensure a greater uniformity at the district council level concerning our values? And they list as an example the issue with beverage alcohol. They state that while some districts hold a very strict adherence, there are other districts that they seem to be personally aware of that tend to be more lenient on this particular value. So how do we ensure a greater uniformity at the district level?
I hear this from time to time by the grapevine, the AG grapevine, but I don't know, I have not seen any evidence of that. There is a process in our fellowship where if a minister violates our standards of doctrine or behavior, that the person who is aware of that violation brings that to the district, and the district has a responsibility to process that in terms of a disciplinary mode by Article 10 of the bylaws. So, you know, I circulate in a lot of districts, and I hear grapevine statements of that, but I don't know if they how much veracity there is to it, because no one has ever presented to me evidence that districts are being lenient on the matter of alcohol consumption.
We've got some questions coming in. I'm going to go off script here. That's a little dangerous for both of us, but I'm going to go off script here. We've got someone that has asked, could you comment on the state of our missionaries in the Middle East?
Well, we have to keep a very low profile on that because, quite frankly, our people in the Middle East, if we identified them with the M word, would be very much in danger. I can say that we are seeing, first of all, I want to salute those who are serving in hard places.
Right.
It's incredible what's being done, and the Live Dead movement in the Assemblies of God has brought a tremendous thrust forward of outreach to the Muslim world, and we're grateful for that. There are some stories, quite frankly, that cannot be publicized because of the need to not alert civic authorities of what's happening. But there are in a number of countries we know of tremendous amount of conversions happening among Muslim background believers. I mean, Muslim persons are becoming Muslim background believers, or what we call that, the Muslim background believers. And in one country alone that I know of personally, where a missionary has served for 40 years, in the last 2 years, there have been about 50,000 Muslim background believers now in that country that weren't there 5 years ago. So we're seeing some good results, but we also recognize that some of the soil in the Middle East is hard ground, and so we're very supportive of people, whether they're in the seed stage of the harvest or in the reaping stage of the harvest. We do have about 300 personnel that are involved in the Middle East from America.
Approximately 300.
Approximately 300.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate their sacrifice. Could you address GPH and our printing departments, our resourcing departments? What kind of resources are being made available? How are those departments doing financially? I know there's been some shift and some change, moving away from print more toward the digital copies. So could you address the resource department?
Yes, the national office does its very best to be responsive to what's happening on the ground level at the local churches and ministers. Our goal is to resource. And what I see has happened as a trend, which is very concerning to me, is that many of our churches have dropped some of the intentional discipleship programs that have been the mainstay of our fellowship over the years, such as Sunday School, Royal Rangers, Girls Impact Clubs or Missionettes, Bible quizzing. And when churches begin to drop these intentional discipleship ministries, if they're not replacing them with something that's intentional, we're going to lose a generation 10 or 15 years from now when these kids get out of high school, because they've never had a firm footing underneath their feet for why they believe what they believe. So at the national office, we've made biblical literacy a very high priority. We want to encourage our churches to recognize that if they're not doing what has been a traditional method of delivering discipleship to children and adults, that they at least do look at what they're substituting. Is it being effective? And that, beginning with Brother Trask's administration, we began to see a decline of our churches ordering printed material from the General Council. And that, of course, impacted the earnings of the Gospel Publishing House that then get plowed back into ministry. So, and at the same time, we've attempted to adjust to the digital area by increasingly offering resources on digital platforms, and we're making good progress in regard to that with our True Fire curriculum, for example, for Children's Church, which has just come out, which is a phenomenal digital delivery resource for our churches, and we're seeing a lot of acceptance of that. Financially, we just had one of our best years in the last 10 years in terms of the overall well-being of the General Council, and we'll have that report out at the General Council meeting in Anaheim itself. We're very encouraged that the printing operation seems to be stabilized. Beginning with Brother Trask's administration, there had been a gradual decrease in the number of employees. That's continued under my leadership. In the last 10 years, we have 300 less employees today than we had in the operations 10 years ago, but I think we're still putting out quality resources for our fellowship with a reduced workforce. But the fact is that by and large, our churches are ordering less, and there are reasons for that they've abandoned intentional discipleship programs, or they've gone to other markets which are non-Pentecostal. How can you produce a Pentecostal next generation if you're not using Pentecostal resources? That needs to be addressed by our pastors, quite frankly. I'm concerned about that. Sure, you can get stuff off the internet, and you can get, you can make up stuff in your own church, but we do an intentional, biblical, spirit-filled, spirit-empowered focus on our resources. And if churches are getting non-Pentecostal resources, they're going to ultimately produce non-Pentecostal people. So Absolutely. That's a concern I have.
Absolutely. That's I'm in total agreement with that. Before we move on to our final section of questions here concerning General Counsel, let me refer back to the tension we spoke about earlier, and I believe some of that tension is probably due to transition. Again, we got a generation on the way out, a generation on the way in. There's always tension when there's change. Change creates tension. None of us like change and transition. So what is happening from the national leadership level to ensure that the reins of leadership are being transitioned off to people who will take the Assemblies of God into the future?
We have a system where our people elect leaders, and the national leadership has no control over that.
Indeed.
In many districts now, the elections even have gone to electing maybe just a superintendent, giving the superintendent ability to appoint people to positions with the ratification of the presbytery. We have been flexible on how we do governance, but when it comes down to it, when the delegates meet at General Council, they've got an electronic voting device in their hand, and that's the ultimate backstop. If the General Council starts electing leaders who don't share our mission, our values, or our doctrine, then that's where we're going to get. So it's important that people recognize the very critical aspect of who we put in to office to ensure that we remain true to our mission and doctrine.
Very good. Well, that leads us right into questions concerning General Counsel. We are all alarmed, I'm sure yourself included in the ELT, at the lack of attendance and representation. We know that there are various reasons for that. Many of our bivocational pastors and small church pastors struggle to attend General Counsel. We know that it's unhealthy to have such a small representation. So what can be done, what is being done to help expand the attendance at General Counsel? I know there's been talk about internet voting. Could you address that? Could you address how do we become more healthy with a greater involvement from the credentialed ministers in General Counsel?
One of the things that we have found in previous councils as we reviewed registration is that the greatest number of persons present and voting at General Counsel are pastors of smaller churches. That may surprise some because I think the perception is that only the wealthy can afford to come to General Counsel. Many pastors of larger churches use that as vacation time and don't come to General Counsel at all. So we feel that the General Counsel voting, although it certainly is smaller than the fellowship itself, is probably a true polling. There are polling devices that represent true samples, and given the history of what's happened to people that get elected and resolutions that are adopted, probably the General Counsel, even though it doesn't consist of all the credentialed ministers, probably fairly represents what the will of those ministers is, because it's more of an accurate sampling. We try to select places where there is a lower cost involved, if possible, for hotels and the like. So when we go to Orlando, when we go to Phoenix, or when we go to Anaheim, we know that there's all kinds of range of hotel prices. And I think a lot more people could come if they'd make it a priority. I found that a lot of people are able to do what they want to do if they put their will to it. And of course, there are some that are not able to, as you mentioned, they're bivocational. We have in recent years live streamed it so that they could be part of it. You mentioned internet voting. One of the difficulties with internet voting, there are a number of difficulties. One is a technical difficulty of how to get people logged on to AG Passport, because we'd have to have a secure system. Our IT department estimated that it would take about 200 people manning the phone lines because of our past experience of people confused about logging on to AG Passport. We also have the case in Brazil that went to the Supreme Court just this year. They had internet voting, and the losing side claimed that there were votes that were not valid votes, and the issue wound up in the Supreme Court of Brazil. I don't know that that's even yet been decided, but it's terrible when believers have to go to a secular agency to find out what the valid vote is. The other issues are the time consumed, you would need probably for if you did live voting and internet voting, you'd probably need at least 10 minutes for each vote. You've got 24 time zones around the world. If you calculate that time out and recognize that there are, between elections and resolutions, it would totally consume all of the time at General Council just to do voting, irrespective of dealing with the resolutions. It would be enormous, and it would also probably end attendance at General Council, because if people can stay home at a computer, they probably won't come to General Council, and it misses the element of dynamic interchange that occurs at a council. So there are just a lot of reasons technically why it's not yet feasible, and there are reasons, I think, theologically and socially why it may have injurious impact to have internet voting. So, it's something, it would be good if a district tried this first, or a local church in their annual business meeting said, for those that can't come or that are working or whatever, we're going to provide an opportunity to do internet voting. Let it be tried some on the local and district level before trying to expand it across 24 time zones and 37,000 ministers. It would be quite a feat to administer that.
We've got some that are posting questions asking if there's any plan to bring the General Council to a location in the center of the United States in the future. They believe that may lower their cost and ease the burden to attend.
We have looked at St. Louis, Indianapolis, and Kansas City. There are, I won't identify which city has which problems, but the problems we've encountered are strong labor unions, which raise the price terrifically for the expense of the General Council. We also, with the Fine Arts Festival being parallel to General Council, need a huge amount of breakout rooms for the Fine Arts Festival, and many of these cities do not have the capability of hosting a convention that has that many breakout rooms required. The third issue in one city that we want to go to that's smack dab in the center of the country is they really don't like us because we're a non-alcoholic convention and it drives their profits down. So that is why we have not been able to secure a place in the center of the country. It's not because there's a lack of desire. I see a question pop up, why not Dallas? Same problem that I've just articulated. So we in San Antonio, very expensive place in San Antonio to hold a General Council. So that's the cost issues, facility availability, labor union issues, like $50 in the exhibit hall to plug in a light bulb. You can't do it yourself. You've got to have a certified electrician that's a labor union member, and you get $50 charge every time you plug something in. It's just insane. So that's why we've pretty much gone back and forth between Orlando and Phoenix, because they provide the convention center without cost, essentially, to the General Council, and give us great breaks on expenses. And so we just have to go where we can financially feasibly do it. It takes about $3.5 million just to provide for the operational expenses of a General Council. So, if that's kind of a long answer to a short question, but that's a little bit of what goes into the thinking as to where they're going to be located.
Well, let me respond to the Dallas and San Antonio situation, because I'm a native Texan. We believe everything's bigger and better in Texas, Dr.
I know. I understand. We'd love to go to Dallas or San Antonio.
How about the vacant offices? Just have a couple of questions left. I know your time is running short. Can you give us the update on the vacant? I know the U.S. Missions office is vacated, and I believe there are going to be some EP offices vacated. So you kind of give us a quick rundown on vacated offices where we will know that we will be electing a new person to serve this fellowship.
Right. The offices that are term limited, Jesse Miranda, who is the Western Region Hispanic representative, Warren Bullock, who is Northwest Executive Presbyter, Don George, who is Southwest Executive Presbyter, are all going off at this council, so there'll be new seats there. Brian Smickall, who is the under 40 representative, will be going off because he's now age limited. He's 42. In addition, of course, Zolly Smith has announced his retirement, and there will be an election for that. We will not know who the candidates are for that until the General Presbytery votes, because it requires a nomination coming out of the General Presbytery, and any nominee who receives at least 15 votes in the General Presbytery is forwarded to the General Council as a nominee. In the other positions that are up for election are the Office of General Superintendent and the Office of General Treasurer.
Thank you. How about the resolutions? When will we be seeing those in our mailboxes?
Fairly soon. The Resolutions Committee has completed its work in early May. They're being formatted, and we have constitutional or bylaw deadlines as to when they have to be in the mail, and I forget what that deadline is, but they will be mailed out in advance. The caveat is that the General Council bylaws provide the General Presbytery the privilege of sponsoring resolutions to the General Council that waive the notice requirement. So there's always at General Council a separate resolution packet that is contained that has General Presbytery resolutions that have come in the meeting immediately preceding General Council. So I don't know at this point what those resolutions will be. A lot of times they're just housekeeping kind of resolutions of General Presbytery, not earth-shaking resolutions. But the resolutions packet should be sometime fairly soon in the next few weeks out to the members.
And let me reiterate what you said earlier, that the only way we can ensure the future of the fellowship being transitioned into proper hands is by electing those who are going to best serve the fellowship. And that brings us to the point you made just a moment ago as well. There are a number of vacated offices, so you and I are definitely in agreement, and we would encourage everyone viewing this to attend General Council if at all possible. Dr. Wood, I've got to go ahead with the follow-up.
Well, I was just going to say, in addition to the business, we've tried to really make General Council a time of spiritual investment into the lives of those who come, and we really feel that the spiritual impact of this General Council is going to be very significant, beginning with the Influence Conference, moving on to the evening services and the Thursday morning service and the Friday morning time with Dr. Robert Morris as well on Friday morning. And by the way, I heard Dr. Morris give his teaching on the blessed life, encouraging a culture of generosity in local churches. I really believe that our churches would take a great leap forward if they hear what he has to say on the theme of generosity. It's phenomenal teaching, and I've asked him to come and do that. But there's a rich variety of the Tuesday night service, of course, is the opportunity for the General Superintendent to preach. Wednesday night will be a strong message from missionary evangelist Jason Friend with translation in Spanish, because we have a huge Spanish speaking segment in our fellowship. Thursday night is a missions night, and with Greg Amundis and with Zolly Smith. So those evening services are going to be very impactful, and we're really looking forward to great altar calls, great responses at those services.
I want to conclude with the number one question. I'm going to put you on the spot here now. The number one question that was submitted, you mentioned a moment ago that the Office of General Superintendent is going to be vacated. And I am going to ask you, how do you feel the Spirit leading you? If you can or would share that with us. If this council would again vote you in as or consider you as General Superintendent, do you feel the Spirit leading you in that direction to serve this great fellowship 4 more years?
Well, where I felt in my personal prayer life is to let my name be considered by the fellowship, and if the fellowship wants to go another direction, that's the fellowship's choice, and I will be just as happy either way. I really feel that these past years have been very fulfilling. There's a lot of things that are yet to be done. I'm encouraged about the progress that we're making on them. If the fellowship wants me to continue, I'm open to that. If it wants to make a change of direction, that's fine with me as well. That's a decision to be made by the membership, and I just have not felt at this time that I would do anything other than just simply letting the fellowship decide that question.
Submit to the process. Thanks for the answer. Dr. Wood, I want to say how appreciative I am of you taking the time to be with us, and congratulations. I should have mentioned that earlier. Congratulations on 50 years of ordained ministry.
I was 39. I'm 39 years of age, and I don't know how I got 50 years in.
That is a Book of Acts miracle. That is a Book of Acts miracle.
Yeah,
well, I know this constituency is very, of the Facebook page, is very pleased to have you with us. I hope it's not the last time. And I want to say to you publicly that although you and I may have disagreed at times and probably will in the future over some policy, we have always corresponded personally, and I respect you and thank you for, again, taking the time and sharing these things with us today. And just pray that you have a great weekend, and I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, Jason, feelings mutual, and there, in any body as large as ours, there are going to be times of disagreement. But, what we have in common is far greater than any disagreements. And I think that's what we need to keep focusing on, to keep the unity of the Spirit and keep working on our relationships. When I was pastor, there were people when I was pastor that were not always happy with things I did or sermons I preached, maybe. But I always took it as my responsibility to pastor all the people that were in the church. I feel the same way toward the general council. My responsibility as the general superintendent is to serve as best as I possibly can all of our ministers, all of our churches, all of our leadership, and with all my heart, I try to do that faithfully as I possibly could.
Thank you again today. Thank you for your service to the fellowship and to the constituency here of Conservatively Speaking in the Assemblies of God. Thank you for joining us today. We pray that this has been educational and that you've been encouraged by it and that you feel informed. I'm sorry that we weren't able to take all the questions, but again, we express our appreciation to Dr. Wood, and I encourage you to drop him an email, drop him a line, and let him know. Thank you for taking time. He mentioned a moment ago he's preached 9 district councils. I know he's been extremely busy. And I want to reiterate again what the General Superintendent said a moment ago. Not only is it the responsibility of the national office and district office, but each one of us as credentialed ministers in the Assemblies of God, we bear responsibility for the future of this fellowship, for its policy, for its moral standard, for its theological standard. So let's continue the discussion. Let's continue the open dialogue. And let's join together and let's keep the Assemblies of God great. So Dr. Wood, again, thank you. Everyone have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Jason.